In today's video, we're going to talk about how to set up capture points in our top-down shooter and some decisions that we'll have to make along the way when setting up these capture points. So first things first, let's go ahead and showcase what the capture point is and what it does in the game. And so our capture point essentially functions as a gate between levels. So we stand in the capture zone and capture. While enemies flock to us, we have to destroy those enemies in order to open up the teleporter. That takes us to our next level. So, how this capture point works is through a series of blueprints. So the first thing is first. This is what the capture point looks like in the viewport. There's a zone, capture zone, and a teleporter here. So those objects are linked together as one actor. Makes it really easy to control between the two rather than having to use a bunch of casts. They have references built right in, and they're rooted in scene, but they can be moved around individually from within the scene. It makes it really easy to place one actor and then move it across the map however you see fit. So to start things off, the first thing that we have to do is when we begin play with this actor, we're going to disable the overlap events for the teleporter collision, because the teleport collision is what tells our player to go to the next level. When we cross over that collision, that's where we hit. It teleports us to the next level. The next thing we're going to do is cast to the top-down character to place the widget, the capture zone widget, on the player, and then we're going to set a reference for it. Now, the last thing we do is cast to the top-down game instance, get the room number, multiply that by 4, add that to our default max defend progress to get our new defend progress. And so the defend progress is going to increase by 4 for every room we enter. That helps to scale the difficulty a little bit because it puts 1 second between each capture point, or between each checkpoint. So our default progress is 12. And so for the tutorial room that we just displayed on screen, that default progress for room 0 times 4 is 0, max defend progress is 12. And then for room 1, we go to 16, room 2, 20, so on and so forth. Until we get to the end of the game. So this is just to sort of incrementally increase that difficulty. Now, ideally, what we would do in this situation is create a variable here so that we could easily adjust the capture point increment by room without having to hard code it as a 4. That makes it easier to adjust it. And that's something that future iterations will have. So here's kind of the main functionality of it. So on our overlap, once we overlap that capture point, the defend collision, once we overlap that defend collision, we're going to cast to the top-down character, which is a box collision. So we're going to cast to that top-down character, and we're going to clear function timer by name, which is decrement progress. We're going to clear that function, clear that timer, and we're going to set a timer called increment progress that starts 1 second after we enter the zone, and it loops. An end overlap, we're going to clear increment progress and start decrement progress, and that's going to run every 2 seconds. So we're going to gain progress twice as fast as we would lose progress on the point. And we'll only lose it up until we hit that checkpoint, and that's something that we'll go through here as we look at our decrement progress and increment progress. And then our overlap on teleport collision, this is how we get to the destination. And so we cast to the top-down character, that's who we want to overlap, the actor that's overlapping. Then we run our determine destination function. We take our game instance, get the room number, and that tells us a level name. And so then we open the level name. And so we determine destination by doing this. So determine destination casts to the top-down game instance, gets the room number, puts it into a switch on int, and the room number tells you what the next level it's going to go to is. So if the room number equals 0, it's going to send you to map level 1 as the next. If the room number equals 1, it's going to send you to map level 2, so on and so forth, until you get to where you're at, room 4, and it's going to send you to the boss. So I believe this is actually in this increments once it goes through. So that increases the room number on the game instance. So that's way it can open the next level on down the line. And then here's our teleporter active, or activate teleporter event. And so this is where we turn on the teleporter's collision, and we spawn a teleporter emitter at this location, and it activates. And it activates that emitter so that the emitter displays on screen. So let's look at our functions here for increment progress and decrement progress. So the first one we're going to look at is decrement progress. So in decrement progress, this is how the timer works. So it checks to see if it's active. If it's true, we clear decrement progress. So it can't take away progress if the teleporter is active. Then we check to see if the current defend progress is less than or equal to the minimum defend progress. And if it is, we clear the timer. If it's not less than or equal to the minimum defend progress, what we start doing there is we send our capture percent over to our blueprint. We send our current defend progress divided by max. Yeah, so it just checks it, sends it back there so it can get the percent. So as long as it's not less than or equal to minimum defend progress, it's going to do this. It's going to send that update to the capture blueprint, or to the capture zone widget, so that it can update the progress bar with every time it decrements. And we have a similar thing happening on increment, but there's some more information that has to be passed through. So on increment progress, it checks to see if it's active first. If it's active, it does nothing. We don't need to increment progress anymore. We've already hit that capture point. This can also be done with a not. So you can switch this over to a not, so you can run this off of the true branch. Either way works. So if the condition is false, so if it's not active, then we're going to go ahead and increment that current defend progress, divide it by the max defend progress, and send that back over to our capture zone blueprint. So we're going to update that progress bar. The other thing we're going to do is clamp the float here. So we have our minimum defend progress and our max defend progress. So this tells us what ranges the float can be in, so that it doesn't increase beyond or decrease below. And then this checks for if it's greater than or equal to the clamped float value, then we have a branch, and that's going to tell us if it's true, activate the teleporter. So if it equals max defend progress, give us that teleporter. If, and the reason why I have it set as a greater than or equal, and the same reason why we have it set as less than or equal on the other side, is so if for any reason we decide to run the checkpoint, the 4 checkpoint system, not in a multiple of 4. So if it were to hit, let's say 50 capture points to capture the zone, that's not a clean break on checkpoint 1 or checkpoint 3. And so to hit that clean breakpoint, we have to put in that greater than or less than sign. So that way we're going, because we're only incrementing by 1 unit, not a whole unit, not by a half a unit or any other partial unit. So once it hits that point and it gets to 12, let's say, that's below 12.5. So it's going to turn off the decrement progress or decrement progress. If it gets to 13, that's above 12.5. So it's going to want to set that checkpoint and that progress so that it can't dip below that point. And so that's why those two pieces are important. So on our branch here, we're going to check. Now, if it's not, then we're going to run through a series of checks where if it's 25% of the maximum defend progress, we're going to set that checkpoint. And so we have a checkpoint announcement that happens on the widget, and we set this minimum defend progress so that we can't drop below that anymore. Same thing with checkpoint 2 at 50%, and same thing with checkpoint 3 at 75%. So all three of those are going to happen at those different percentages, 25, 50, and 75. So you can't fall below that progress. This is really to encourage mobile gameplay once a checkpoint has been reached. So if you can defend for 7 seconds, clear out multiple groups of enemies that are maybe on screen, run back, sit for 7 seconds, hit that next checkpoint, clear out groups of enemies, and come back. This way you're not losing a lot of progress throughout the level because the enemies are hoarding. And so the last piece is on the construction script, which was really just a dynamic material instance and how you set it for our teleporter color, our teleporter emissive color. This is if we decide to change these values at any point, we have a dynamic way to do it at runtime. And that is the capture point. So thank you for watching the video, and I appreciate it.